It all started with a sound no one expected to hear. Deep in space, far beyond the edge of the solar system, a signal arrived. It was not like the one scientists had been listening for over the years. No random bursts or repeating pulses. This was different. This was clear. This was directed at Earth. The message came through strong on military satellites first. Then it reached civilian telescopes and listening stations across the globe. Within hours, every major government knew about it. The world sat up and listened. "This is the Zirin conquered," the voice said. It was cold and mechanical, but the meaning was clear. "Your planet lies within our expansion zone. You will surrender all resources, submit to our rule, and await further instructions. Resistance will be met with immediate destruction." The silence after that message was louder than any explosion could have been. In Washington, Daniel Harper stood in a dark room filled with maps, screens, and worried faces. He was a retired Navy officer now working as an advisor for planetary defense. He didn't say much, just watched the footage again and again. His jaw tightened each time. Across the ocean, in California, Elena Torres sat at her desk at SETI. She was a linguist used to decoding strange signals from space. But this wasn't a puzzle or a mystery. This was a threat. She read the translated text again and felt her stomach turn. "They're serious," she whispered to herself. Within days, the message spread to the public. People reacted in different ways. Some panicked, others laughed, thinking it was a hoax, but the governments did not laugh. They worked fast. Meetings were held in secret. Generals, scientists, diplomats, and tech experts gathered to talk about what to do. Some wanted to hide, others wanted to run. A few wanted to fight, and then there were those who believed there was another way. Daniel was one of them. He looked at the data and saw something most missed. The Zirin thought humans were weak. They assumed Earth was just another planet full of unorganized life forms. They didn't know how wrong they were. "They think we'll fold," he told the group. "But if we show them who we really are, maybe we won't have to fight at all." Elena agreed. She studied the language of the message carefully. It was formal, rigid, and lacked any sign of negotiation. These beings did not expect a reply. They expected obedience. "We need to send them a message," she said during a meeting in Geneva. "Something short, something strong, something they won't forget." Around the world, people began to react, not with fear but with pride. Online forums buzzed with ideas. Some were wild, others smart. Schools held debates. Radio hosts made jokes. But behind the humor was a growing sense of unity. And then, someone stepped forward. Maya Carter was only 26. She worked at NORAD as a communications officer. She was quiet, calm, and good at her job. When she raised her hand during a strategy meeting, even the generals turned to listen. "If we want to scare them," she said, "we don't need to shout. We just need to speak clearly." Her idea was simple: send a response that would echo across space. Not a plea, not a promise, but a warning. The leaders debated. Some wanted to beg for peace. Others wanted to prepare weapons. But eventually they agreed on one thing: humanity would not bow. So the message was written. Short, sharp, final. We do not negotiate with invaders. It was sent out from multiple locations, from satellites, from ground stations, from ships in orbit. The words traveled into space at the speed of light. On Earth, people waited. Some stared at the sky. Others went back to work. Parents kissed their kids goodnight like always. Life went on. But in space, the Zirin fleet received the message. And for the first time, they paused. They had never heard anything like it. Aliens before them had begged. Planets before them had fallen. But this was new. The humans had answered with strength. Somewhere in the stars, a commander looked at the screen and frowned. "Prepare for entry," he ordered. And so, the war began. Not with bombs or bloodshed, but with a single sentence: a warning. And the universe was about to learn what happens when you threaten a species that doesn't know how to quit. The message had been sent. We do not negotiate with invaders. It was short, clear, and strong. But now came the waiting. No one knew what the Zirin would do next. Some thought they might turn back. Others feared they would strike hard and fast. In the days that followed, something strange began to happen on Earth. Instead of fear or panic, people started to feel something else. Pride, unity, strength. Governments that once argued now worked together. Countries that had long been enemies shared technology and plans. Even small towns held meetings about how to help. Everyone wanted to be part of the fight, even if they didn't know what form it would take. Daniel Harper watched all this from his office in Washington. He had spent years preparing for war, but never like this. He had always imagined soldiers and weapons. Now it felt like something bigger. It wasn't just the military getting ready. It was the whole planet. "This is what makes us different," he said to a young officer. "We don't wait for orders. We rise when we need to." Meanwhile, Elena Torres was busy decoding more of the Zirin language. She had studied alien messages before, but none as direct as this. The Zirin used patterns that were easy to follow. Their words were full of control and command but lacked emotion. They did not ask, they told. She shared her findings with the team at SETI. They listened again and again to the original message, trying to find clues. Was there anything else hidden in the signal? Anything that could give them an edge? Miles away in Texas, a man named Ryan Bell sat in front of a wall of screens. He was a former hacker who had once broken into government systems just for fun. Now, he worked for them. Quietly. Secretly. He looked at the data Elena had sent. "They're not hiding much," he muttered. "But maybe we can use what they show." He started running tests. Could they send a fake signal back? Could they make the Zirin think Earth was weaker than it really was? Or stronger? As these ideas spread through the defense team, something else was happening online. People had seen the message, they had heard the warning, and now they were making videos, songs, even memes about it. One video showed a little girl looking up at the stars and saying, "If you come here, we'll kick your butt." It went around the world in hours. Another showed a farmer in Iowa, holding a wrench and saying, "My tractor's older than your spaceship, good luck." Humor, hope, and heart. Humans were doing what they always did. They were facing danger with spirit. Back in Geneva, a meeting was held between scientists, generals, and leaders from many nations. The topic was simple. What comes next? Some still wanted to hide. Some still wanted to run. But most agreed on one thing. "We are not afraid," said a woman from India, "and we will not fall." A man from Kenya stood up. "They see us as weak because we are many. But that is our strength. We do not stand alone." Daniel spoke last. He was tired, but his voice was steady. "They think we are just another planet to take. They think we will beg. But we have shown them we won't. Now we must prove it." After the meeting, plans moved forward. Satellites were repositioned. Hidden bases were activated. Old projects that had been shelved for years were pulled out and dusted off. Among them was Project Black Sky. Few had ever heard of it. Even fewer knew what it could do. In a quiet lab in Colorado, a team of engineers prepared for launch. They had built something years ago, just in case. Something powerful. Something fast. And now, the time had come to use it. On the fourth day after the message was sent, a new alert came in. The Zirin fleet had changed course. They were heading toward Earth. Not slowly, not carefully. Fast, hard. The war was coming. Back in Washington, Daniel stared at the screen showing the movement of enemy ships. His hands were folded. His face was calm. "They made a mistake," he said softly. "They thought we'd break, instead we got ready. In California, Elena looked at the sky and whispered, "Now let's see what happens when they meet humans." Miles away, Maya Carter sat at her desk, ready to send more messages. She had already sent one warning. Maybe soon, she would send another. Earth had spoken. Now it was time to show the Zirin what those words truly meant. The Ziran fleet was close now. Big ships, dark and sharp like knives, moved through space toward Earth. They were fast, powerful, and full of soldiers who had never known defeat. But Earth was not some weak planet waiting to be taken. In Washington, Daniel Harper stood with other leaders watching the reports come in. The sky above them was filled with satellites, drones, and secret weapons that most people didn't even know existed. "They think this will be easy," he said, looking at the enemy movement on the screen. "That's their mistake." In California, Elena Torres worked non-stop, translating more of the Ziran messages. She found something important. The aliens thought humans were slow, unorganized, and scared. They believed they could land, take what they wanted, and leave before anyone could fight back. She called Daniel with her findings. "They don't understand us," she said. "They think we'll wait for them to decide what happens next." Daniel smiled. "Then let's show them how wrong they are." Miles away in Texas, Ryan Bell sat in front of his screens. He had been given access to deep space comms and enemy signal patterns. He looked tired but excited. "If I can get into their network," he said to his team, "I can mess with their data, make them see things that aren't there." His fingers flew over the keyboard. Lines of code, hidden paths, old tricks he had learned when he was just a hacker with no rules. "Let's play a game," he whispered. Meanwhile, in Colorado, engineers worked around the clock. They were preparing for launch one of the last secrets Earth had left, Project Black Sky. It was a group of hidden orbital platforms, built years ago and kept quiet. Each one carried a weapon no alien had ever seen, a quantum lance, able to punch through even the strongest armor from far away. The idea had started as a dream by a small team of scientists. Now it was real, and it was ready. Back in Washington, Daniel gave the order. "Activate all units. We're not waiting for them to land." At the same time in Nevada, a young pilot named Nina Doyle sat in her cockpit. She had trained for years, but never flown in real combat. "This is it," she said to herself. Not just training anymore. Her fighter was fast and small, built for speed and stealth. She was part of a new unit made up of the best pilots from around the world. None of them knew if they would survive. But none of them asked to stay behind. On the ground, people watched the sky, not with fear, but with hope. Videos showed families, pointing upward saying, "There they go." Kids played war games with toys shaped like Ziran ships. Radio hosts joked about aliens needing better maps. But behind the jokes was something deeper. Pride, strength, unity. And then, the first move came. From high above the planet, one of the hidden platforms fired its quantum lance. The shot was silent, in space but deadly. A Ziran scout ship exploded without warning. No message. No warning. Just fire and silence. The Ziran commander sent out an alert. They did not know what had hit them. They scanned the area, expecting a hidden base or large warship. They found nothing. Again, the platform fired. Another ship gone. Confusion spread among the Ziran fleet. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans didn't have weapons like this. Humans didn't attack first. Back on Earth, Daniel watched the reports. "Good," he said. "Now they're scared." Miles away, Maya Carter sat at her desk, ready to send another message. "Time to remind them who they're dealing with," she said. And so, while the Ziran tried to figure out what was happening, humanity was already several steps ahead, not because they had the biggest ships or the loudest voices, because they were human. And humans didn't give up. They didn't run. They fought. And now, the Ziran were learning that lesson the hard way. The Ziran did not like surprises. They were a species that valued control, order, and strength. But now, as their ships burned in space, they felt something they had not felt in a long time. Confusion. They had expected Earth to be easy prey. Instead, humans had struck first, without warning, with weapons they had never seen before. On board the main warship, the commander gave new orders. "Deploy attack drones, take out enemy satellites, clear the way for landing." The fleet moved, fast. Hundreds of small alien drones dropped from the larger ships. They were fast, smart, and built to destroy anything in their path. But Earth was ready. From ground stations across the world, Maya Carter watched the attack unfold on her screen. She typed quickly, sending commands to hidden systems no one outside the military had ever heard of. "Time to say hello," she said with a calm smile. High above the planet, weather satellites powered up their secret weapons. Bright beams of light shot down from orbit, slicing through the alien drones like knives, through paper. Not all of them, but many. At the same time, massive balloons filled with powerful EMPs rose into the upper atmosphere. When the signal came, they exploded, sending waves of energy outward. Dozens more drones crashed or lost control, spinning off into space or burning up in the sky. But the aliens kept coming. Some of the drones made it past the defenses and headed toward cities: Los Angeles, London, Mumbai, Cape Town. The world held its breath. And then, from hidden air bases, the response came. Fighter jets launched from underground hangars. Some were old models, upgraded with new tech. Others were prototypes never used in real battle. Nina Doyle was in one of them. She flew with steady hands and a calm voice. Her mission was simple: protect her city at all costs. As she climbed into the sky, she saw the alien drones ahead. They were fast, but so was she. She fired a missile. One drone exploded in a flash of fire. She turned hard, dodging another shot. Below, people watched the fight from rooftops and streets. Some filmed it on phones. Others prayed. "Stay safe," whispered a young girl in California, watching her hero fly past. Meanwhile, Ryan Bell worked hard at his keyboard. He had broken into part of the Xiran network and was feeding false data to their ships. One command. Ship thought it was low on fuel. It started retreating. Another thought it was under attack from behind. It turned and fired at empty space. "You want order?" Ryan muttered. "Let me give you chaos." In another part of the world, Liam Ward watched from a remote station. He had created thousands of tiny AI drones, each one faster and smarter than the last. Now, he released them. They launched from hidden towers and moved upward, forming swarms in the sky. They darted between enemy drones like bees with stingers of fire. Each one acted alone but followed a goal: find, strike, destroy. The Xiran tried to adjust. They sent new codes, changed attack patterns, but nothing worked. Humans were not supposed to be this good. Back in Washington, Daniel Harper stood with other leaders watching the reports come in. "We're winning," one general said, surprised. Daniel shook his head. "No, we're just getting started." He looked out the window at the sky. Night was falling and stars were appearing. One of them was home to the enemy. Soon maybe they would visit it. For now, the message was clear. Earth was not afraid. Earth was not weak. Earth was fighting back. And the Xiran were learning a very important lesson. Never underestimate the human race. Because when humans are pushed too far, they don't run, they don't beg. They hit back. Harder than you ever thought possible. The battle was far from over. Though Earth had stopped the first wave, the Xiran were not done. Their main fleet still hovered above the planet, dark and silent like a storm waiting to break. Inside the command center in Washington, Daniel Harper stood with his arms crossed. Reports came in fast. Some good, some bad. "We took out most of the drones," said a general. "But they're preparing another attack." Daniel nodded. He looked at the screen showing enemy ships. They were forming a new line ready to strike again. "They don't learn fast," he said. "Good for us." In California, Elena Torres sat at her desk surrounded by papers and screens filled with alien text. She had been studying the Xiran language nonstop. Now she found something important. "They think we fight like machines," she whispered. "Like everything has to be planned. Like every move must follow rules." She turned to her teammate. "But humans don't work like that." Her eyes lit up. She called Daniel on a secure line. "What if we stop fighting like they expect?" she asked. What if we do things they can't predict? Daniel smiled. I like where you're going. He walked over to a group of military leaders and laid out a plan. We use decoys, fake signals, false targets. We make them chase ghosts. While we hit them hard, some generals frowned. It wasn't the usual way to fight. You want to trick them? One asked. Daniel leaned forward. Yes, and then we punch them when they least expect it. The idea spread quickly. Soon, teams across the world were working together. In Texas, Ryan Bell hacked into more of the Xeran systems. He sent fake commands to enemy ships, making them think there were attacks happening in places where there was nothing at all. Let's see how smart you are when your own computers lie to you, he muttered. Miles away, Liam Ward worked on his drone swarm. He made them smarter, faster, and wilder. Instead of following set paths, he gave them freedom to change, to adapt, to surprise. Time to go crazy, he said with a grin. Above the planet, the hidden orbital platforms fired, again. This time they didn't just target ships, they aimed for supply lines, fuel carriers, and small fighters. One big Xeran ship tried to refuel. As it connected to a storage unit, a quantum lance struck. The explosion lit up space like a star gone wrong. On the ground, people watched the sky. Not with fear anymore, but with pride. Videos showed kids pretending to fly fighter jets. Parents told stories about heroes who had fought before them. Radio hosts played songs with lyrics like "Don't mess with Earth" and "Humans don't fall." And then came the moment no Xeran commander could have expected. Nina Doyle flew her small fighter straight toward the biggest enemy ship. Others had tried to attack it, but its shields were too strong. So Nina had an idea. If I can't shoot through it, she said, then I'll go inside. With help from Ryan, she got close. He hacked into part of the ship's system and opened a small door used for repairs. It was risky, it was crazy, but it was human. She dove inside, flying through tight halls and empty rooms. Alarms screamed around her. Guards ran. But she was faster. Deep inside the ship, near the power core, she dropped her last bomb. Then she turned and flew back out just as the whole place exploded behind her. The shockwave rocked the sky. On the ground, people cheered. In the command center, Daniel watched the footage. Now that, he said, is what makes us dangerous. Because humans did not just follow orders. They thought. They felt. They adapted. And when faced with impossible odds, they did the impossible. Back in space, the Xeran fleet started to slow down. Confusion spread. Their plans were failing. Their logic couldn't explain what was happening. They keep changing, said one officer. They don't follow patterns. His commander looked at the burning wreckage of his once powerful fleet. Maybe that's the pattern, he said quietly, because humans didn't need rules to win. They needed heart, and that was something the Xeran had never learned how to fight. The Xeran fleet was breaking apart. Ships that had once flown with power and pride now drifted through space, burning or silent. What had begun as a simple conquest had turned into something else entirely, a battle they were losing inside the command center on Earth. Daniel Harper watched the reports come in. He didn't smile, but his eyes showed something close to pride. This wasn't just a win, it was a message. They thought we were weak, he said to the officers around him. Now they know better. In California, Elena Torres sat at her desk, listening to captured Xeran communications. The voices were different now, no longer cold and certain. Now they were filled with fear, confusion. They don't understand what's happening, she whispered. They've never fought anyone like us before. She translated one message from a Xeran officer. Enemy tactics are unpredictable. They do not follow logic. She smiled slightly. Humans didn't need logic to fight. They used instinct, courage, even love. In Texas, Ryan Bell worked fast. He had broken deep into the Xeran network and found something useful. An emergency escape route coded into their system. If they could reach it, parts of the alien fleet might survive and return home. Ryan typed quickly. He changed the codes. He rerouted paths. He made sure that when the Xeran tried to run, they wouldn't be able to. You came here thinking you could take what you wanted, he muttered. But you're not leaving so easy. Miles away in Colorado, engineers launched the final phase of Project Black Sky. The last orbital platforms powered up. These weren't just weapons anymore, they were hunters. From high above the planet, quantum lances fired again. One struck a command ship, another hit a fuel carrier. The Xiran tried to move, to regroup, but every path led to fire. On board the largest surviving Xiran warship, the commander gave an order. Send a message to all units, prepare for retreat. His voice was low, tired. The war was over. They had lost. Back on Earth, the message was intercepted. Elena read it and passed it along. Daniel looked at it and nodded. Good, he said. They finally get it. He picked up the radio and called the team at NORAD. Mrs. Carter, he said. It's time for one more message. Miles away, Mia Carter sat in front of her console. She had already sent the first warning. Now, she would send the last. She took a breath. Then she spoke into the mic, clear and strong. You came here, thinking we were prey. You forgot one thing about predators. You don't threaten the top of the food chain. The message was sent across all channels. It echoed through space. It reached every Xiran ship still alive. Some tried to answer, some begged for mercy. Daniel stood in silence for a moment, then he gave the final order. Cut off all escape routes. They're not going anywhere until we say so. The Xiran flagship, damaged and alone, floated in space. Its engines were failing. Its weapons were gone. Its crew waited for what came. Next, Nina Doyle flew nearby in her fighter. She looked at the enemy ship through her cockpit window. Should I finish it? She asked over comms. Daniel thought for a moment. Then he answered, No, let them live. Let them tell others what happened here. Because this wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure no one ever made the same mistake again. Across the world, people watched the news. Cities cheered. Radios played songs. Kids ran outside to look at the sky. They had won. Not because they had the biggest ships or the loudest weapons, because they were human, and humans did not back down. Humans did not give up. Humans fought until the end. And sometimes they even made their enemies wish they had never been born. As the Xiran ships floated in silence, the message was clear. Earth had spoken, and the universe had listened. The battle was over. The Xiran fleet no longer moved with power or purpose. What ships still lived floated in silence, surrounded by Earth's forces. Some had surrendered. Others were too damaged to fight. On the ground, people began to breathe, again. For the first time in days, they looked at the sky not with fear but with pride. The stars above were no longer just lights in space. They were reminders that Earth had faced something huge and won. In Washington, Daniel Harper stood outside the command center looking up. He had spent years preparing for war, but never like this. Not with satellites, hackers, and pilots who flew like dreams made real. A young officer walked up beside him. What now? The officer asked. Daniel smiled slightly. Now we make sure they remember this day, he said, and that no one else tries the same thing. Inside the building, reports came in fast. Teams across the world worked together to secure captured Xiran ships. Scientists studied alien tech. Diplomats prepared for what came next. But not all the news was good. Nina Doyle's fighter had been badly damaged during her final attack. She had returned safely, but barely. Her face was tired, her hands shook, but when reporters asked if she would fly again, she only smiled. Of course, she said, someone has to keep the sky safe. Miles away in California, Elena Torres sat at her desk, translating more of the captured messages. The Xiran were confused, scared, and broken. She read one message from a young Xiran soldier. We were told they would fall. Why didn't they fall? Elena closed her eyes for a moment because humans didn't give up, because humans fought for each other, because humans had heart. In Texas, Ryan Bell leaned back in his chair watching the news, on a small screen. He had spent the last few hours making sure the Xiran couldn't send any more messages home. Now he allowed himself a short break. His phone rang. It was his mom. "Are you okay?" she asked. He smiled. "Yeah, Mom. Better than okay." He looked around his room, filled with old keyboards, coffee cups, and notes. He had gone from being a hacker no one trusted to someone who helped save the planet. Not bad for a guy who once broke into a satellite just to see if he could. Back in Colorado, engineers worked hard to recover alien tech. Among them was Liam Ward, the quiet genius who had built the drone swarm that turned the tide of battle. He stood near a broken Xeran ship looking at it like it was a puzzle. "You guys really thought you could beat us," he muttered. Then he turned and walked away, already thinking about what came next. Around the world, life slowly returned to normal. Schools opened, markets reopened, kids played in the streets again. But things had changed. People no longer saw themselves as just citizens of countries. They saw themselves as part of something bigger. They were human. And that meant something now. In NORAD, Maya Carter sat at her desk, going through old files. She had sent the first warning. Now, she was helping write the lessons from the battle. When a reporter asked her how she felt, she answered simply, "Proud," she said, "and ready for whatever comes next." Because the war was over. But the future had just begun, and Earth was no longer just a planet waiting in the dark. It was a force, a voice, a power, and the universe had finally learned its name. Humans, and they did not forget. Ever. The war was over, but the story had only just begun. In the weeks after the Xeran surrender, Earth changed, not just in how people saw themselves, but in how others saw them. Deep in space, other alien races listened to what had happened. They had heard the Xeran threat. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, they got silence. Then came the messages. Not from enemies this time, but from watchers. Ships that had stayed far away during the battle now sent quiet signals toward Earth. Some asked questions. Others offered something new. Trade. Peace. Alliance. No one knew how long these aliens had been watching. Maybe for years. Maybe longer. But now they wanted to talk. In Washington, Daniel Harper read the reports with a calm face. He had spent his life preparing for war. Now he was being asked to prepare for peace. "They're not afraid," said a young officer. "Just careful." Daniel nodded. "Good. They should be." He looked at the list of names. Alien species with strange sounds and meanings. None were known to humans before now. "We're not just on the map," he said. "We're on the radar." In California, Elena Torres sat at her desk, translating the first of many new languages. She had once studied alien threats. Now, she was studying alien greetings. She smiled as she wrote down a phrase from a race called the Virex. "To meet you is to respect you." It felt strange. Not long ago, the only message sent to humans was a demand for surrender. Now it was different. Humans were no longer just another planet in the stars. They were known and feared and respected. Miles away in Texas, Ryan Bell watched the news on a small screen in his dark room. Reports showed footage from space, Earth ships meeting alien ones, diplomats shaking hands with beings from other worlds. "Kinda wild," he muttered. "1 month ago we were fighting for our lives. Now we're having dinner parties." He typed a few lines into his computer, setting up secure channels for future contact. "Let's see if they're really friends," he said, "or just smart enough to not be enemies." Meanwhile, in Colorado, Liam Ward worked on new projects. The drone swarm that had helped win the war was already being improved. But now there were talks of building something else. Peacekeeping drones, exploration, drones messengers. He leaned back in his chair and thought about it. "Guess we're not just fighters anymore," he said. On the ground, life went on. Kids played with toys shaped like alien ships. Radio hosts joked about how humans had scared off their first real visitors. But behind the jokes was something deeper. Pride, hope, change. Because for the first time in history, Earth was not alone, and it wasn't weak. Back in NORAD, Maya Carter sat at her desk, going through old files. She had sent the first warning to the Xeran. Now she was helping write the first welcome message to other species. When a reporter asked her what it meant, she answered simply, "We were ignored before. Not anymore." Nina Doyle stood beside her, wearing a pilot's jacket covered in medals. "We fought hard," Nina said, "and we won. Now we have to make sure we use that win right." Around the world, people talked about the future. Would humans travel to other stars? Would they build ships that could go beyond the solar system? Would they become part of something bigger? The answer was yes, because humanity had proven something important. They didn't just survive. They grew. They learned. They rose. And now, the galaxy was looking at them with new eyes, not as prey, not as targets, but as equals, or even more, as legends, as warriors, as humans. And across the stars, a new saying began to spread among traders, explorers, and travelers. Don't mess with humans. Because they bite back harder than you expect, and they never forget. Who hurt them, or who tried to stop them? Years passed. The sky was no longer just a place to look up at. It was home to something more than stars. It was where humans now reached. Earth had changed, not just because of the war, but because of what came after. Schools taught new lessons. Not just about history, but about courage, unity, and strength. Children learned how a single message had turned the tide. We do not negotiate with invaders. In classrooms across the world, students read about the people who made that happen. They read about Daniel Harper, the retired officer who helped lead the fight. They read about Elena Torres, who translated alien messages and gave humans an edge. They read about Ryan Bell, the hacker who turned enemy systems against them. And they read about Nina Doyle. Her name was carved into the first human space monument. It floated high above the planet, surrounded by stars. On it were the words, "She flew when others ran. She fought for all of us." Liam Ward's code became part of every AI system used by Earth. His drones protected cities, searched for life on other planets, and even built homes on the moon. Miles away, Mia Carter worked as a diplomat. She traveled between worlds, helping humans speak with new friends and stay ready for old enemies. The galaxy had learned something important. Humans were not easy prey. They did not run. They did not give up. They stood tall, and they remembered on the moon, a small base grew into a city. On Mars, the first human colony opened its doors. Ships built by many nations now traveled farther than anyone had dreamed. And in deep space, Earth had allies. Some were traders. Some were scientists. Some were warriors like the humans themselves. But all knew one thing. To mess with Earth was to face something they could not predict. Creativity, heart, hope. Because unlike most species, humans did not just follow rules. They broke them when needed. They changed plans when things went wrong. They adapted, they rose, and they never stopped. Daniel Harper sat in a quiet room watching a video of young pilots training for space missions. He smiled slightly. "You're in good hands," he whispered. He was older now. His uniform hung looser. His hair was white, but his eyes still held fire. He looked out the window. The sky was clear. The stars were bright. Somewhere out there, a Xeran survivor told stories to his children. "Never go near Earth," he warned. "They are not like the others." In California, Elena walked through a museum filled with alien tech and human heroes. She paused in front of a screen showing the first warning message sent to the Xeran. She read it again. "We do not negotiate with invaders." She smiled. "Still gives me chills," she said softly. In Texas, Ryan watched a new generation of coders work on systems that would protect Earth from future threats. "Don't make the same mistakes we did," he told them. "Just make better ones." In Colorado, Liam looked at the sky and thought about what came next. Not war, not fear, something bigger. Exploration, peace, growth. And then a voice came over the radio. Message from Space Station Nova. It was short. New. Signal detected. Unknown origin. Liam leaned forward. Let's see who wants to meet us now. Because humans had proven something. They were not just part of the universe. They were shaping it. They were learning. They were growing. And they were here to stay. As the stars burned quietly in the night sky, one truth remained. Earth had spoken once, and the universe had listened. Now it was time to speak again. Not with warnings, but with hope, with strength, with heart. Because the story of humanity was far from over, and the best was yet to come.